navigating the latest compliance updates.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. It seems that being in the Maritime Hub, navigating is a topic of the day. Second panel with navigating as a part of the title. So, without further ado, let's start with immediately our topic of the day. One of the main compliance and regulatory concerns that the industry faces on a daily basis remains AML. And it's not news that there are updates coming up. And I would like to ask immediately Adriana, what are we expecting from even a European perspective, and how will this affect the gaming industry, not just locally, but European-wide? Are we really ready for this? Is everyone aware of what's going on?
Well, thanks, Robert. As you noted, one of, I think, main developments on the, let's say, European level in the terms of the regulatory trends is definitely the changes of the AML regulation that are coming. For start, very soon we will no longer have directive, we will have a regulation. So that speaks a lot about where is the AML on the priorities of European agenda, because the rules will be directly enforceable like we have with the GDPR now. So from the moment when the regulation is adopted, everything that is in the regulation will be applicable for each and every member state in the same way. Of course, we will have still national laws that will develop a bit further, but definitely the environment will be different. And since we as a Betsson are quite involved in following developments in this field, especially through our industry associations such as SiGMA, I can tell you that although the text is now, let's say, in the final stage, in the trialogue stage, it's still not adopted, but we can expect that very soon, somewhere from the April, probably next year, we will have the final text of the regulation. There are three key things maybe that I would like to highlight. Well, for start, the first one, certain rules will definitely be a bit more prescriptive. So we will have more prescriptive rules, how we identify the customer, how we do customer due diligence, etc. So that will be something that is already given in the text of the regulation. There were a lot of discussions whether the threshold for the industry especially should be decreased. There were some ideas to even drop it down to the level of 1,000K. Luckily, so far it seems that it will stay on 2,000K threshold as it is, because as we all know, we do need to have a certain level of the information in order to done properly checks, and also a certain level of the gaming activity in order to spot certain patterns. And I do believe that the lower the threshold, the harder to do this. That's definitely one thing that will be a bit more, as I said, prescriptive in the new regulation. Also the outsourcing rules, the form for the STR. There are some certain standards that will be in the text of the new regulation. The second, I would say, important thing is that we will have a new authority that will be responsible for the supervision of the AML on the European level. So AMLA is, as far as I remember the name. And the authority, in one way, will have enforcement power, but also will be the standardized body that will be dealing with the implementation of different standards, especially technical standards in the area of the AML, which is quite good, because then we will have more interpretive guidances on the European level, how we should do verification, how we should do certain checks. But also what we raise as the industry is the importance to have this industry outlook on these areas, especially when it comes to the AML, that we as the industry as well included, and as well AMLA has the industry-specific focus when dealing with these kind of guidelines. And I would say the third, the most contentious one, was definitely that from the start of the regulation, it was quite visible that somehow gaming and crypto, as newest industries in this area, were highly the point of the discussion, especially in the terms of the applicability of the regulation, which again brings the question of the rules that apply to cross-border services, and especially for the gaming companies when they are providing services based on the point of where they get a license to the other European countries where still the frameworks are not adopted, or where we have a monopolies as a situation. And I have to say that unfortunately, this is the most contentious point still, there are still ongoing the discussion whether this is the topic that should be at all covered in the AML regulation. Unfortunately, I think it will be, because as far as how the text look like, there will be quite certain rules regarding the applicability of the AML rules specifically to the gaming companies. But we are still defining the text in order to make sure that the mechanisms and the regulatory regime that we already have and that comes from our licensing obligation is practically something that is also reflected in the AML laws, and that we don't create more confusion.
So basically what we're saying is that what we did not manage to achieve in the gaming sector throughout the European jurisdictions and having a certain harmonization, this will be pushed now rather through the AML side of things.
Exactly, but we still need to keep in mind that there is the reason why gaming is not harmonized at European level.
Exactly.
So I do agree that certain things should be harmonized, but when it comes to the licensing and regulatory regime, there is a reason why we left that up to the member states to decide.
Of course. Sasha, how do you deal with these kind of situations? How do you prepare from a compliance perspective to changes like this one or others, if not necessarily AML related?
I mean, I completely agree with Adriana here. So people like us and the places like here, we should raise awareness of the things that are coming. You all remember 2017 and 18 when the EU came up with the GDPR. It's a sort of a regulation. AML right now is a directive, but as they are announcing, they're going to become a regulation, which means obligatory for all the member countries. Remembering the GDPR when it came, the one thing which made a high point in terms of how familiar and how famous the GDPR became was the penalties. You all remember the 4% on the turnover of the group companies, not just the one, which might be the small company. Not sure how they're going to come up with the fines within the AML, but it's for sure something that the compliance people like us should raise awareness that something like the 6th directive is coming very soon. It's going to be a regulation, not a more directive. And it's having some very serious points that Adriana already mentioned, which we need to tackle.
Yanica, from this perspective, let's keep on this topic for the time being. Can you do, how can the industry not just prepare by providing support or awareness, but are there means to actually affect this movement?
Thanks, Robert, and thank you to WH Partners for having me here. I think one of the most important points is the industry's effectiveness as a group. So there's so much knowledge and resources within the industry, and it's often not shared because it's sometimes not invited to be shared with regulators. And regulators and legislators around Europe and around the world have their own underlying themes of legislation and perhaps separate regulatory objectives, and they're putting together regulations that sometimes do not clearly achieve the regulatory objectives which they should be achieving. But we have so much knowledge and so much resources that we could be sharing with these regulators. I think there's more that the industry could be doing on a lobbying front. And lobbying has negative connotations, but really what I mean is sharing knowledge and sharing best practices. Like we're seeing with AML, luckily there are industry groups that are actually affecting and making a difference, because if this regulation went through as it was originally, it wouldn't have been the best for the industry. And there's much more going on. There's separate pieces of legislation around the EU. There's obviously a lot of countries going through the second wave of regulation. And it's so important and so crucial now more than ever for all the operators to come together and share information, even between themselves, not just with regulators. Thankfully, there's a lot of Chinese walls that seem to have gone down as well, because there used to be, there wasn't such a cooperative atmosphere, to say the least, between operators. But it seems to be much better now. I mean, we more or less have the same goals, and we should definitely be cooperating together and focusing our resources also on informing and educating regulators and legislators.
Vlad, from your perspective, what do you think operators, suppliers in the industry can do to affect regulatory updates, and how do you prepare for regulatory updates?
Well, hello everyone, nice to see you all. Well, we prepare to them on a regular basis. First of all, they are coming on a regular basis. You know, one of the problems are constant changes in different jurisdictions, what was already mentioned. So, and it seems that the regulations become outdated by the time the ink dries out on the signature, you know, and there are tens of them, hundreds of them. So it's a separate job to follow all this, and it's a full-time job. This is what we are doing. So how do we prepare? That's life. We analyze, analyze gaps, and build bridges. That's what we do.
When it comes to the current updates also from a local perspective, we have heard about the ECG, the minimum capital requirements. What's the feeling that we're having here? Are we over-regulating? Are we clarifying what was not clarified? Do we need these? Do we need more of this? On what topics? I open the question to the whole panel because I think it's very vast and it could be effectively really multiple points of regulatory aspects. Go ahead.
I can say something, a couple of lines. The previous panel mentioned something about the ESG and this new code of conduct being voluntary, which I would emphasize voluntary for now. As long as the MGA keeps it like that, I would say that it is welcome as a guidelines for us operators to follow the guideline, which is code of conduct in this particular case. Small comparison, when you read the code of conduct and you read all 39 measures or recommendations that are contained within the table, within the code, you will find yourself covering already, at least from my perspective, covering already like 50 or 30 to 50% of the things that we do without the code of conduct as well. So having a voluntary as a guideline is welcome by us, but as long as does not come such as an obligation for operators to follow everything what is written over there, it's going to be very, very hard to do that.
Yanica?
Yeah. I think there's an obvious underlying theme here with the ESG code and the minimum share capital requirements that was published the week before. It's sustainability, right? And sustainability in many forms: environmental sustainability, sustainability of your player base, and all the player protection measures that brings with it, and also sustainability of the industry in Malta. And clearly, the legislator and the MGA seem to be raising the floor as well, with all the measures that they seem to be implementing. But I think the MGA has been really good with consultations as well. And that, again, that's our role, right? To reply to these consultations. One of these consultations, they actually had to extend the timeline, which can only mean, or I imagine it means, that they either receive too many or they receive too few. And it's probably too few. And that's on us, right? Because it's useless complaining later if you actually had the time to intervene and you didn't.
I agree. I tend to see this pattern of seeing consultations coming out, reaching out to clients, asking them for input, also helping understanding what's going on to give an educated reply to the authority at the end of the day of what they are aiming to achieve, whether this is actually really going to be met with this new consultation. But
if I may add, I just thought, since I'm coming from the crypto industry or from virtual financial assets industry, we are lucky. Because with the introduction of the new MiCA regulation, markets and crypto assets regulations, which we anticipate in the beginning of 2025, can you imagine our capital requirements, if everything goes well, will go down like 5 times. So if you want to be a bit jealous, think about it.
No, but at least luckily, MiCA is also based on the Malta system. So people who were already in line with the Malta structure, at least they have been well prepared.
And yeah, we're anticipating that those operators who are in good standing will be one of the first operators who will receive the pan-European license. And MFSA is actually working on it to assist the operators and doing surveys and analyzing gaps in order to work with the operators to help overcome or do what needs to be done.
Yeah, just briefly on that note, Robert, I think there are two important things for me. First, we kind of need to wake up as the industry and understand that we are part of the wider regulatory framework. And although we were till now a bit on the side, having the specific regulatory regulations only applicable to us, now, as you can see, there is a huge push from the EU on the more horizontal rules, and therefore we will be part of this kind of initiatives. So stability is something that is just coming, and we cannot just keep this wave. Yeah, we can discuss how we implement it, in which form, whether we are definitely the first in line of the industries that should be there. No, we have much bigger issues in the carbon industry, etc. So, but definitely this is something that we need to get slowly on that way and become a part of wider regulatory landscape. And that brings me to the other topic. Yeah, we are, in the end of the day, highly regulated industry, and we should live and breathe that mentality. And this is something that just needs to stop to be point of the discussion. We need to start operating like many other regulated industries. Of course, we need to have open doors in the dialogue with regulators. Our industry voice is super important because our industry is very complex, and in the end of the day, mainly us who are in the industry can really actually represent what are the actual implications to the industry, how we can implement different requirements. So definitely it needs to be closer cooperation, especially in certain jurisdictions when we work on the new regulatory frameworks. But that's why, as I said, it's super important for us in the industry to be more proactively involved in this phase when we are drafting different regulations, not just to wait for the rules to come in force, but as Yanica mentioned, to send the comments, to be there, to hear our voice, and to practically say practically what is our perspective on these matters.
I think the message here is let's be proactive, not reactive. Let's be involved in the framework. We're not passive actors here. We're very much active. We should be active. So as a last question, then I see that there are a few faces from the MGA here. If we were to tell them a topic that we would like them to consult us on, what would it be? Difficult question.
Accepting crypto payments and dealing with centralized exchange wallets, for example, and introducing the travel rule, because the travel rule is the information exchange system between the sender and the recipients, something similar to SWIFT, which is about to become obligatory. In some jurisdictions, it is already enforced. So technical implementation and basically technological implementation is a big issue because there is no common standard.
Yanica?
The new CEO.
Apart from that.
I'm joking. I'm sure the MGA will continue to be consulting on all the different changes it continues to implement. I think more recently we've seen that the MGA has been really good with seeing the practical implementation of what it implements. So it's not just the rules, but also how they're implemented practically. And we'd like to continue seeing more of that. And I wish Karl the best of luck for his future, if he's still here.
Sasha?
I think somebody mentioned here word harmonization. I think, Adriana, you were the person. I don't know, it's not about the MGA. The question was, what would be like the message to the MGA? But us working in the compliance and operating on the different markets, it brings challenges to be compliant with all the different stuff that different regulators are applying to us and changing all the time. I would say that my wish would be that the MGA, that everybody is like MGA, transparent, with the clear legislation, with the clear technical requirements, with the correspondence, with the friendliness, I would say like this in a communication, that everybody else in Europe at least become like MGA. So if the MGA can do something in the larger level, like Europe, like an example how to regulate the market, then MGA, please come forward with this.
Yeah, I have to agree on this with Sasha because, in all fairness, with MGA, we always do have, as the industry, quite open dialogue. And as you see, all the documents, every new regulations that are adopted, everything is always on the public consultation. They are really proactively seeking the opinion of the industry. But that comes, as I said, maybe even from historically, because this industry practically started from Malta. And that's why this is still one of the rare countries in the gaming world where you don't feel that stigma of industry, where you see the industry as legit business model, which it is, because it's licensed model and that's how it should be. So I would really voice with this and Sasha and maybe discuss how MGA can
affect the other operator.
Can cooperate with other operator in order to enhance the cooperation in other markets.
Very well. I have run out of our time, so thank you everyone for listening. I leave the stage for the next panel.